In the process of building a competitive advantage with data enabled learning, it has got various manifestations in the running business now, with several changes in the market and the competitive process of building a competitive advantage. There is every possibility of data learning creating a competitive advantage to any organization, and there is possibility when it does not also. Let us discuss these points now. How to build competitive advantage duly taking all precautions and the longevity and the life cycle of data based learning or data learning a process. Many managers and investors assume that it is possible to use customer data capabilities to gain an unbeatable competitive advantage. The more customers you have, the more data you can gather, and that data, when analyzed with machine learning tools, allows you to offer better product that attracts more customers. You can then collect even more data and eventually marginalize your competitors in the same way that business with sizable network effects do. Or so the thinking goes. More often than not, this assumption is wrong. In most instances, people grossly overestimate the advantage that data confers. Data is good. It has to be taken into consideration with a lot of care in analyzing process and the method with various networks. The virtuous cycles generated by data enabled learning may look similar to those of regular network effects, wherein an offering like a social media platform becomes more valuable as more people use it and ultimately garners a critical mass of users that shuts out competitors. But in practice, regular network effects last longer and tend to be more powerful. To establish the strongest competitive position and advantage, you need them and data enabled learning. However, few companies are able to develop both, that is, both data learning and the competitive position through the powerful network. Few companies are able to develop both. Nevertheless, under the right conditions, customer generated data can help you build competitive defenses. You know very well, several products require defense mechanisms. These defense mechanisms can be built in a paka way through this data. Even if network effects are not present, this can be done. In this discussion, let us see, we'll walk through that those conditions and explain how to evaluate whether they apply to your business and your own business at all times at different phases of development and different phases of building the competitive advantage in the market. Really, let us see what has changed. Companies built data have been around for a long time. Take credit bureaus and the information aggregators, LexisNexis, Thomson Reuters, and Bloomberg, just to name a few. Just to name a few. Those companies are protected by significant barriers to entry because of the economies of scale involved in acquiring and structuring huge amounts of data. Here, my emphasis I would like to go is involved acquiring and structuring huge amounts of data. Mere collection of much data will not be useful, but the structuring the data and analytical process adopted by an organization about the data. The business models do not involve gleaning data from customers and mining it to understand how to improve offerings. Gathering customer information and using to make better products and services in age old strategy. But the process used to be slow, limited in its scope, and difficult to scale up. For automakers, consumer packaged goods companies, and many other traditional manufacturers, it required crunching sales data, conducting customer surveys, and holding focus groups. But so many changes have come, and the systems have changed dramatically with the advent of the cloud and new technologies that allow firms to quickly process and make sense of vast amounts of data. Internet connected products and services can now directly collect information on customers, including their personal details, search behavior, choices of content, communications, social media posts, GPS location, and usage patterns. After machine learning algorithms analyze this digital exhaust, I'm using the specific word digital exhaust. A company's offerings can be automatically adjusted adjusted to reflect the findings and even tailored to individuals. Reflecting the process and tailoring to individuals, these two words give you a lot of very deeper connotation in the process of analyzing the data and suitably carving out your product to the market necessaries. These developments make data enable yielding much more powerful than the customers' insights companies produced in the past. They do not, however, guarantee defensible barriers. Building modes with data enabled learning to determine to what degree competitive advantage provided by data enabled learning is sustainable. Here, the problem is sustainability. Companies should answer several questions. They must have self analysis, critical analysis with the several questions normally which will arise in the process of data analyzing. How much value is added by customer data relative to the standalone value of the offering? The higher the value added, the greater the chance that it will create a lasting edge. Let us look at a business. When the value of a customer data is very high, Mobileye, the leading provider of advanced driver assistance systems, which include collision prevention and lane departure warnings for vehicles, Mobileye sells. So several things can be done, but the thing is, we have to question, we have to analyze, we have to phase wise compare the advantage a company, an organization is getting by data relative to the standalone value of the previous offerings. Conversely, the value of learning from customers is relatively low for makers of smart televisions, but still they do lot of business. So, how quickly does the marginal value of data enabled learning drop off? This is what the important factor on which every manager has to concentrate. In other words, how soon does the company reach a point where additional customer data no longer enhances the value of an offering? The more slowly marginal value decreases, the stronger the barrier is. Note that when answering this question, you should judge the value of the learning by customers' willingness to pay and not by some other application of specific measure such as the percentage of chatbot queries that could be answered correctly or the fraction of times a movie recommendation was clicked on. Let us say you graphed the accuracy of several processes. Few manufacturers and moderate level testing would be significant to achieve, say, 90% accuracy. But how much of time it will be sustainable? How many years or how many months it can sustain? And this learning, when will it drop off? That is the critical question that every manager has to see in database learning, creating a competitive advantage. Building competitive advantage, a continuous process is a continuous process, should be by a separate think tank in an organization, basing on the very large customer base, which is acquired normally by a bigger organization. Then how fast does the relevance of the user data depreciate? This is another important question that every manager has to look into it. If the data becomes obsolete quickly, then all other things being equal, it will be easier for a rival to enter in the market because it does not need too much the incumbent's years of learning from data. This is where must be cautious. You must be always constantly monitor and with all caution take precautions. All the data accumulated over the years from manufacturers remains valuable when the current versions of its products. So does the data on such engine users that Google has created over decades. Although searches for some terms sometimes may become rare over time, while searches for new ones might start appearing more frequently. This is one point which every manager, senior executive has to take into consideration. Another important point is the data proprietary, meaning it can be purchased from other sources, easily copied, or reverse engineered. I'm using specifically these words. Can be purchased from other sources, easily copied, or reverse engineered. Having unique customer data with a few or substitutes is critical to creating defensible barrier. Consider several startups who have invested in this field, which offers a crop management system that allows growers to primarily to do continuously monitor individual plants. The system relies on AI, artificial intelligence, computer vision software, several methodologies. But it is important to keep in mind that whether technological progress can undermine the position based on a unique or proprietary data. A case in point in speech recognition software, historically, users need to train the software to understand the individual voices and speech patterns, and the more person used it, the more accurate it became. This market was dominated by several important solutions like Dragon solutions for many years. But another important point also has to be taken into consideration by the senior executive is how hard it is to initiate product improvements that are based on customer data. Even when the data is unique, even when the data build up durable competitive advantage, if the insights, it is difficult to build a long oriented data. Resulting enhancements can be copied by competitors without similar data. Even without involving undergoing this process, several companies may be doing it by reverse engineering and entering into the competitive world, and they may be creating a competitive advantage again in the very tough situation of the market. A couple of factors affect companies' ability to overcome this challenge. One is whether the improvements are hidden or deeply embedded in a complex production process, making them hard to replicate. That may be some problem. Another important factor we have to take is how quickly the insights from customer data change. How quickly the insights from customer data change. The more rapidly they do so, harder they are for others to imitate. For example, many design features of the some companies cannot be copied by others because of the tough exercise that company has built up in that competitive advantage, duly participating, duly acquiring, duly involving several new methodologies through database learning than machine learning. Another important question, let us see. Does the data from one user help improve the product for the same user or the others? Ideally, it will do both. But the difference between the two is important. When data from one user improves the product for other is also possible, and the firm can individually customize it, creating switching costs when data from one user improves the product for other users. This can but may not create network effects, both kinds of enhancements help provide a barrier to entry. But the former makes existing customers very sticky, whereas the latter provides a key advantage in competing new customers. This is where an organization has to be very, very careful in building the competitive advantage through data leading. How fast can the insights from user data be incorporated into products? This is the real managerial process, the capacity and the capability of the organization in incorporating into products. Okay, good that you have analyzed the data, you brought very good features, but how to incorporate as early as possible to reap the advantage in the market? That is what is ultimate goal. Uh, It is offered by direct several online lenders, several organizations, this sort of things. But current borrowers that from previous borrowers, which is already reflected in the contracts and rates to care about the future learning that lend benefit, but this benefit cannot long last. Does data confer network effects? The answer to question is it is both way possible. The data enabled learning will create a true network effects when learning from one customer translates into better experience for other customers, and when that learning can be incorporated into a product fast enough to benefit its current users. This is where market technique lies. How far it is useful to the current customers, current users. Customers will care about how many other people are adapting the product. They will try to compare in a society how many other people are using. This mechanism at work is very similar to one of the important things. So, building a competitive advantage through data learning process, database learning, and incorporating it into product as early as possible. Many cases, nearly all the benefits of learning from customer data can be achieved with relatively low numbers of customers, and in some applications dramatic improvements in artificial intelligence will reduce the need for customer data to the point where the value of data enabled learning might disappear completely in a particular stage. Regular network effects, on the other hand, extended further and more. Finally, I would like to conclude with these points. This important factor building a competitive advantage in the tough breeded market. Even a mundane customer products become smart and connected. New kinds of clothing, for instance, can now react to weather conditions and track mileage and vital signs. Data enabled learning will be used to enhance and personalize more and more of offerings. However, their providers won't build strong competitive positions unless the value added by customer data is high and lasting for a long time. The data's propriety and leads to product improvements that are hard to copy. This is very, very important. That hard to copy, we must create a condition for the others to hard to copy. And the data enabled learning creates network effects. In the decades ahead, in the future, improving offerings with customer data will be acquirable for staying in the game for a long time, and it may give incumbents an edge over new entrants. But in most cases, it will not generate winner take all dynamics. I'm using this word winner take all dynamics. Instead, the most valuable and powerful businesses for foreseeable future will be those that are both built on regular network effects and enhanced by data enabled learning. Here, I would like to emphasize that regular network along with database learning can make the organization to build competitive advantage very, very great manner in the present day market situation. Thank you very much.